What's up, Travis with TCustomz Productions, TCustomz.com. In today's video, I am going to show you how I created the bass patch for an instrumental entitled When It Comes to This. This is a darker hip hop beat that I uploaded a beat making video to, kind of recreating this entire track on the channel a couple weeks back. That will be linked in the description. But today I just want to focus on this group right here. You can see I've got a bass group and I've got 4 tracks. These are the 3 core bass layers that I'm using, and then this is just kind of a secondary bass track. But I get a lot of questions about what patches I use, how I come up with the sounds, and I don't typically do anything really crazy with my bass sounds. I try to find really quality sounds, and then if the bass patches that I'm going to use as my primary sounds don't have all of the elements, they don't have maybe some sub bass, or it has a lot of sub bass and doesn't have some mid frequencies that I'm looking for, then I will go dig some other sounds, whether it be in my plugins or wherever else, and try to find other bass patches that complement the sounds that I'm already going to use. In this case, I'm using a patch from the TCustomz bass pack as kind of as my sub bass, and then I'm also going to be using a patch from Spectrasonics Trilian, and that patch is Funktronic Lead. Before I break down the bass, I first just want to play back a snippet of the hook with all of the elements included, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so now I just want to focus and solo out the bass itself. I'm going to solo out this group and just play back that exact same snippet that I played, but just with the bass. Okay, so out of these 4 tracks that comprise the ultimate sound that you're hearing with that bass line, bass 2, 3, and 4 are the prominent sounds. So if I toggle over to session view, you'll see, just looking at the volume levels, you'll see that these 3 are the most prominent, and this bass 1 is kind of tucked back in the mix. If I just focus on bass 3, you'll see that when I open up Trilian, again, the Funktronic Lead sound, and the only other thing that I've done with this is added a low pass filter just to remove a little bit of that high end. And so I'm going to play this back first without the filter, and so you can kind of hear this one patch isolated. And the reason why I added this low pass filter was just to remove, again, some of the high end, especially for these notes right here where this bass line kind of runs up into a higher register. I didn't really want all that. I wanted that to come through a bit, but I didn't want all of the higher end that comes with those high notes, and so I just rounded some of that off. So this gives me a good start. One element that this particular patch is lacking for what I need for this beat is some super low end or some sub range. And instead of getting in and trying to tweak the existing patch there and add an EQ and boost that, I just went ahead and opted for a sub bass patch to supplement that. And this patch is actually patch number 1 in the TCustomz bass pack. And so all I did was copy that bass line down in MIDI format, layer those 2 together, and now all I'm really looking to do is make sure there's not any frequency confliction and make sure that I'm getting the appropriate amount of sub that I want in there. And so it's a matter of leveling. I also did just some minor filtering. That was just kind of a little extra to help shape the sound. If I solo this out, if you have headphones or you have monitors that can pick up the lower register, you'll be able to hear what this sounds like it's by itself. and then with the previous patch. So these two bass patches layered alone sound good as is. As I started mixing the track, I was trying to make the bass a little more prominent in certain areas, and so I opted to dig into some other patches to see if I could layer something else to help fill in some of the gaps. So the next layer I added was a duplicate of bass 3. So bass 3 was the Funktronic lead patch like I mentioned. All I did was duplicate that. I pitched it up an octave, so it's at a higher register, and then I put a filter. It looks like 492 hertz. So this is what it would sound like without the filter. And then with the filter, just to roll off some of that low end, because I already have that from the other two sounds. And then all three sounds layered together. The fourth patch that I layered is another patch from Trilian. It's called Lead for Greed. You also see that I put a couple filters on this to limit the range, and this was the one that was very subtle. It's only brought in during the hook and certain parts of the verse. It's very nuanced. It's probably not even something, I can definitely hear it when I was mixing the record, but it's not something that's very in your face. It's very subtle, but it just gives an extra level of character to the bass. So if I solo out this sound and I remove the filters, this is what it sounds like. And then when I enable the filters, this is going to restrict a lot of what's coming through and what you're able to hear. Again, and this was also pushed back, so it's very subtle. So now what I'm going to do is start from the beginning. I'm going to start with bass 03, let that play, and I'm going to slowly enable all these bass tracks as we go along. And that way you can get a better representation of what each track is adding to the bass line. And so that was my process for creating the bass patch for this particular beat. I didn't do any crazy processing. It was basically getting the right sounds, figuring out what parts of those sounds that I wanted to come through filtering and EQing, and then making sure at the end that all the levels, were appropriate. Sometimes you may need to add compression, or you may want to add separate effects like distortion, or even adjust some of the settings within your plugins. But for me, I like to try to keep things as simple as possible at the end of the day, as long as it sounds good and sounds good relative to the track that you're working on. That's what's most important. But hopefully this can give you some ideas or be helpful in some way. Even if you're not necessarily using these exact plugins, it can be applied to whatever you are using. But I am a big fan of layering, and it takes some time to go through the sounds, but in the end, sometimes it's worth it to spend that extra time. If you did like this video, please make sure to thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already. If you have any recommendations or suggestions for things you would like covered in the future, feel free to leave those in the comments. Like I mentioned, the sub bass patch that I'm using in track 4 here is included in the TCustomz bass sample pack, which will be linked in the description. And if you have any other questions, let me know. I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.